Okay, great. So thanks to all of you who organized this conference. Well, today I'm going to present my paper on American tea consumption in the 19th century. Well, I'm not doing history of the census, so it's great to be here to learn more. Well, this very rough paper will be the last two chapters of my current book project on Chinese American tea trade in the 19th century. So my paper examines how, because the tea trade is a business of color and flavor, so my paper examines how tea merchants monopolized different types of tea and how they manipulated the color and flavor of tea, and very briefly how they marketed different types of tea. So because I'm doing business history, so through these perspectives, I just want to show the power dynamics in the global tea trade and how it shaped American tea consumption in the 19th century. Okay, so the Chinese-American tea trade started in 1784 when the Empress of China came to Canton. So we can see from this chart, tea was the most valuable commodity, while especially black tea. So black tea was still the major commodity for American merchants in the late 18th century. However, in the 19th century, Americans started to develop a special taste for green tea, which is very different from the British tea consumers. Especially, they have this special taste for young hyson, this type of green tea here we can see. And also because of their taste for green tea, oolong tea became another popular tea in the United States after the 1840s. Well, so by the turn of the 20th century, some Americans even said that oolong tea is a special American taste. Well, they called it oolong tea. They called it a black tea with green tea flavor. This is a very confusing concept because actually oolong tea is neither black nor green. It's a tea between black and green. So the major difference between black and green tea is that black tea is fully oxidized or fermented, like the term that Chinese tea workers used a lot. While green tea is not fermented at all because of the Q-green techniques stopped the oxidation process. So black green tea just has that green color and a special flavor. However, oolong tea just combined the techniques of black tea and the green tea. So oolong tea is a partially oxidized or partially fermented tea. So it looks like black tea, but it has a green tea flavor, and but in the meantime, it has a like higher flavor, than green tea. So this is oolong tea. Well, the Americans' special taste for green tea and oolong tea, according to my research, I think this is a more supply-driven than a consumption-driven phenomena, because by the mid-19th century, the global tea trade had been a highly monopolized business, because before the mid-19th century, China was the only country that provided tea to the world. Well, in China, on the supply side, under this Canton trade system, only Han merchants, there were about 13 Han merchants. Only the 13 merchants were allowed to trade with Americans and European tea merchants. So basically, these about 13 people controlled world tea supply. And also because of the high risk in the international trade, most of these Han merchants chose to trade with British merchants and British East India Company because they were well capitalized. So on the demand side, British EIC monopolized the tea trade. We can see, although the US grew to be the second largest importer of tea from China, the Great Britain still had the largest market share, especially because of their monopoly. East India Company could contract tea in March each year for the following year's supply. So they almost purchased all of the black tea, including Bohea and Congo, and all the green teas, including Tongkai and Hyson. Well, we can see Hyson Skin and Young Hyson, the most popular green tea in the United States, were kind of insignificant in the EIC import. That's why, well, maybe Young Hyson became more and more popular in the US, and especially especially because young Hyson became a cheap substitution for Hyson tea, because basically they are the same type of tea. So young Hyson, in theory, young Hyson should be a better type of tea because it should be produced with the tea bud, or they turn the tenderest leaves, because the best green tea should be produced that way. But because of the large demand, well, Chinese tea workers, when they produced Hyson tea, they just cut off the large and coarse and old tea leaf to produce young Hyson. So that's why young Hyson became a cheap substitution. But this producing process didn't alter the color and the flavor of green tea. But Chinese and American merchants had some techniques to alter the color and the flavor. So in terms of green tea, well, many Chinese and American tea merchants used indigo and Prussian blue, later Prussian blue, to dye green tea. Because we can see here, the natural color of Chinese green tea and Japanese green tea too, maybe, are more yellowish or grayish. However, according to the 19th century literature, people back to that time think green tea should be very green, otherwise it's not green tea. So these merchants just colored green tea to attract more consumers. This is green tea. While in terms of black tea, American merchants actually used the art of blending by mixing black teas with different flavors. And in this way, they produce a new brand of tea, English breakfast tea. There are actually quite a few theories about the origin of English breakfast tea, but almost everyone agrees this was an American invention, and the English breakfast tea was most popular in the United States. English breakfast tea became more and more popular in the late 19th century. It was a vogue among tea consumers. However, this technique to dye green tea backfired in the late 19th century because of the public concerns over food safety and purity. So we know the meat packing industry, right, reflected by the novel The Jungle. Well, in the tea industry, people also debated a lot about the safety and purity of tea. So eventually, the Tea Act of 1897 was passed. Well, in this process, Chinese tea, especially colored Chinese green tea, became the target of debate and also advertisers. While Chinese green tea became less and less popular, especially because of the historical context. In the late 19th century, modern advertising also emerged as a technique to promote commodities. Well, in the meantime, although before the mid-19th century, the global tea trade was a highly monopolized industry trade, but in the latter half of the 19th century, more competitions came from India, Ceylon, Sri Lanka, and Japan to compete with Chinese tea, because this tea producing techniques was introduced to India and Ceylon during this period, while Japan opened its green tea market to the United States. So in this process, Indian, Ceylon, Japanese, and British tea merchants just used food advertising and the discourse of food purity to promote their tea products and to advertise against the Chinese tea. Well, a lot of research has been done on the marketing aspect. So I didn't talk much in my paper, and I didn't have actually enough space to talk about it, but I just want to show you how some merchants use the discourse of purity and the modern advertising technique to promote their product. Like this Ceylon tea company just claim that their tea is very good. It's very good for health just because of its purity. Well, in the meantime, American merchants also used the same technique to promote their product. Like this tea company in New York, they claimed that their tea is the purest tea in the market, no matter what types of tea you will buy, oolong English breakfast or mixed tea and English breakfast tea should not be pure tea. But anyway, they were using this discourse of food purity to attract more consumers. So the consequence was a diversified tea consumption in the United States. So although Chinese tea, Chinese green and oolong still were still the most consumed tea in the United States. But by the turn of the 20th century, more teas from other countries like Japan and India and Ceylon started to take more market share in the United States. And the landscape of American tea consumption was totally changed because of the power dynamics in the global international tea trade. Okay, that's it.